Hello, Interfax Agency. Everyone is interested in the results of the talks in Riyadh. I am sure that they have already reported to you. How do you rate them? Is there a positive result, if I may say so, from these talks? Yes. They reported to me. That is the first thing. Secondly, I rate them highly. There is a result. The first thing I would like to say is that we have agreed to resume the work of diplomatic missions in normal mode. The constant expulsion of diplomats from both Washington and Moscow does not lead to anything good. If things continue like this, then only cleaners will work in these buildings, whose work should certainly be appreciated. But this is not what diplomatic missions are created for. That is the first thing. Secondly, in my opinion, we have taken the first step to resume work in a variety of areas that are of mutual interest. This includes the Middle East in the broad sense of the word. I mean our continued presence in Syria, the Palestinian-Israeli settlement, and so on. There are many issues there, in the resolution of which both the United States and the Russian Federation are involved, despite the fact that, of course, we attach primary importance to the situation related to the Ukrainian direction. But we also have other issues. This is the economy. This is our joint work on global energy markets. Therefore, overall, there is a lot of work. Yes, of course. This includes space, because despite all the problems of the past 3 years, we continue to work in space. And both American astronauts and Russian cosmonauts work on the ISS. The work continues, and the prospects are good. All this was the subject of discussion, the subject of consideration at the meeting in Riyadh. The assessment is positive. Yes, excuse me, and overall, as they reported to me, the atmosphere was very friendly. As our participants told me, on the American side, these were completely different people who were open to the negotiation process without any bias, without any condemnation of what was done in the past. In any case, there was nothing of the sort in the current bilateral contacts. They are set to work together. They are open to work together. But the Europeans are agitated. They are all in a panic, almost, that they are not participating in the negotiations, and the same sentiments are present among the Ukrainian leaders. Everyone wants to have a voice. What should we do with them all? A voice in what? I just said that the goal and subject of our negotiations was the restoration of Russian-American relations. Does anyone want to be a mediator between Russia and the United States? These are probably excessive demands. But the most important thing here, in resolving all the very pressing issues, including the Ukrainian settlement, is that without increasing the level of trust between Russia and the United States, it is impossible to resolve many issues, including the Ukrainian crisis. The purpose of this meeting was precisely to increase trust between Russia and the United States. As for the other participants, first of all, Russia has never refused to contact the Europeans. Russia has never refused to negotiate with Ukraine, never. It was our, so to speak, partners in these negotiations who refused. The Europeans stopped contacting Russia, and the Ukrainian side forbade itself to negotiate. They withdrew from the negotiation process in Istanbul, directly, publicly announcing this. Well, we are not imposing anything on anyone. We are ready. I have already said this 100 times. If they want, then welcome. Let them conduct these negotiations, and we will be ready to return to the negotiating table. As for Euro-Atlantic relations, we do not interfere there. We do not speculate on the issues that arise between the United States and its allies. But if we talk about these allies, they themselves are to blame for what is happening now. Well, listen. They accused Trump at the time of having some special relationship with Russia, and that Russia interfered in the elections when he won in his last term of office. They created a team. They dragged him through the courts. They even created a special commission in Congress. Nothing was confirmed. It could not be confirmed because it never happened. And what have we just seen during this election campaign? All European leaders, without exception, actually directly interfered in the election process in the United States. It came to direct insults to one of the candidates. We, for our part, observed, of course, it was clear who we sympathized with, but we did not allow ourselves to interfere. And even more so, we did not allow any harsh statements and offensive attacks against each of the candidates. We simply did not do this, but the Europeans did. In general, to be honest, I am surprised by the restraint of the newly elected President of the United States, Trump, in relation to his allies, who behaved in such a, frankly, boorish manner. After all, he still behaves quite intelligently in relation to them, but the Americans do not close themselves off from this. After all, if we are talking about the Ukrainian settlement, then the United States is working with its European allies. Mr. Kellogg, as far as I know, is now in Kiev, right? Before that, he met with the Europeans. Now the President of France is going to Washington, as well as the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Nothing is closed there. The Americans are discussing all this with them. But, for example, we have such a question as the extension of the START III treaty. Everyone has probably forgotten, but I will remind you that exactly 1 year from now, in February 2026, the Treaty on the Limitation of Strategic Offensive Arms expires. Do the Europeans want to sit here at the negotiating table and mediate between Russia and the United States? Well, probably not. But why get hysterical here? Hysteria is inappropriate here. As for the negotiation process, President Trump told me during a telephone conversation, I can confirm this, that, of course, the United States assumes that the negotiation process will take place with the participation of both Russia and Ukraine. Nobody is excluding Ukraine from this process. Therefore, there is no reason for such a reaction to the Russian-American meeting. It seems that Marco Rubio promised to keep European allies informed. Yes, we know this. We see it. But we, for our part, will inform our friends within the BRICS framework without any doubt. We know their interest in settling Russian-Ukrainian relations, in settling this crisis, in ending hostilities. We treat their proposals with respect. I have already said this many times, and in the very near future, we will inform them of the results of the Russian-American negotiations. And when will you and Putin, when will you and Trump meet? I meet with him every day. I look in the mirror. You know, this must be prepared. I would be happy to meet with Donald. We have not seen each other for a very long time. We do not have any close relations with him, but still, in previous years, during the 4 years of work, when he was president, we met, and we discussed our interstate relations very evenly. I would be happy to meet with him even today. I think he would too. This was evident from the nature of our telephone conversation. But we are in such a situation that it is not enough to simply meet to drink tea or coffee. Just sit and talk about the future. We need to ensure that our teams prepare issues that are extremely important for both the United States and Russia, including on the Ukrainian track, in order to arrive at solutions acceptable to both sides. And this, of course, is not an easy task. I have already spoken about this. When Mr. Trump was a candidate for President of the United States, he spoke about deadlines, fairly short deadlines for settling, say, the Ukrainian crisis. But after he started receiving information as an already elected president from the special services and so on, he changed his position. He said that he would need 6 months. Well, we will not talk about the time frame now, but this is natural. By the way, this is absolutely natural. There is nothing special here. He simply started receiving information, objective information, and this information changed his approach. Therefore, some time is needed. How much time will be needed? I am not ready to answer now, but we have a desire to hold such a meeting, and I would like to hold this meeting. But I repeat once again, it needs to be prepared in order to have a result. Of course, I have already said, we have many areas of cooperation. This includes strategic stability. This is the Middle East in the broad sense of the word. This is cooperation in the economic sphere, primarily in energy. You know, I still remember our three-way conversation on the phone. I, your humble servant, also U.S. President Trump, and the King of Saudi Arabia participated. The three of us spoke on the phone. We discussed issues of the global energy market. These issues, and the discussion of these issues in this format, are in demand today. By the way, I would like to sincerely thank the leadership of Saudi Arabia, the King of Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince for not only kindly providing the Riyadh platform for holding high-level meetings between Russia and the United States, but also for creating a very friendly environment. I think that in the next couple of days, today it is impossible, since I am on a trip to St. Petersburg. And in the next couple of days, I will definitely call the Crown Prince and personally thank him for this assistance. Let me clarify about the dynamics of the special operation. Despite the negotiations, the special military operation continues. What news is coming from the front now? Well, you know this news, military correspondents, your colleagues. These are extremely informed people, courageous, frankly speaking. They heroically carry out their mission. They fulfill their duty, both civil and professional. They objectively inform the public of Russia, but also the whole world about what is happening on the line of combat contact. The latest information that was reported to me literally an hour ago. Tonight our fighters of the 810th Brigade crossed the border of the Russian Federation and Ukraine and entered enemy territory. And along the entire line of combat contact our troops are advancing. There was a drone attack in the Krasnodar region on an oil station. Could this be Zelensky's response to the positive relations that are gradually developing between Russia and America? Yes, I understand. I don't know this, and it's hard for me to assess what happened. But it happened, it was, and, of course, it needs to be explained somehow. There are many questions that arise here, and it is very difficult to answer them right now. But first, maybe I will say something unexpected, but nevertheless, after all, attacks of this kind are impossible without space reconnaissance. And Ukraine receives high-precision space reconnaissance data on targets, in relation to targets, only from its Western allies. And who specifically gave them this space data? Who provided them with space images of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium facilities? I don't know right now, but I can tell you with full confidence that the Ukrainian armed forces are not capable of doing this on their own. They do not have the corresponding space satellite constellations. That is the first thing. The second thing is that there were no and still are no air defense systems, Russian air defense systems, at this facility. And it is clear why, because we assumed that this could not be an object of attack. Strictly speaking, this is not a Russian facility. This is an object of international energy infrastructure. The shareholders of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium are American companies. I think it is Chevron, and European companies, including Eni, and Russian companies, this is Lukoil. We only receive, figuratively speaking, 5 cents for this transit. This transit does not make any economic sense for us. We simply provide this service to our Kazakh friends and those partners who work in Kazakhstan. And the oil that is produced, one can generally say, since it is produced under a production sharing agreement, it is in fact the property of the companies that produce it, in this case American companies, European companies. In general, of course, this is not a critical volume, but still it is a noticeable volume on world markets. And, of course, the destruction of such an object, 6 drones were used in the attack. This affects and will affect world energy markets, primarily because, unfortunately, it is impossible to quickly restore this object, and it is impossible to restore it quickly due to the fact that there is mainly Western equipment there, and this Western equipment was damaged. By the way, I was just told that the Europeans extended sanctions against Russia, including specifically the impossibility of supplying us with Western equipment in the oil and gas sector. What does this mean? This means that 2 days ago the Ukrainian armed forces launched an attack, and 2 days later the Europeans announced that it was impossible to repair this station because the main equipment there was of European manufacture, including the German company Siemens. If this equipment were to arrive tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, even then it would take 1.5 to 2 months to replace it. And now what does this mean? This means that it will not be delivered at all. Of course, if you look at it purely formally, then this looks like some kind of coordinated actions. But I don't want to believe it. I think it happened by accident. The Europeans are simply going their own way, and they are not paying attention to what is happening. But formally, if you look at what is happening, it looks like some kind of coordination. Why do they need this? It is unclear. Because this leads to consistently high prices for energy resources on world markets, which energy consumers, such as European companies, are certainly not interested in. By the way, the current U.S. administration has also repeatedly announced that they are striving to stabilize or even lower energy prices. But actions of this kind, of course, are directly opposed to achieving the goals that the American administration sets for itself. But I know that just yesterday the consortium participants held a meeting on all these problems that have arisen, and they are deciding for themselves what to do next. But I repeat that this is not so much our problem as it is a problem for foreign investors and foreign participants in the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. Thank you very much. All the best.